We are now ready to move into the next session, creating an unparalleled customer experience. It is now my pleasure to welcome our chairperson of this session, Craig Menzies, Principal Analyst, Forrester. Craig is the lead customer experience analyst for Australia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asia. Craig also researches on behalf of and advises professionals in key marketing and strategy roles, including e-business and channel strategy, customer insights, marketing leadership, and the Chief Marketing Officer. Thank you, Craig, for being with us and agreeing to chair this session. We also have an incredible panel with Arun, Jain, founder and CEO, Polaris Financial Technology Limited, Tuija, Pirttilä, Head IT Group Functions, Nordea's Bank, and Vasudev, VP and Head, Yahoo India R&D. I'm sure we can look forward to a scintillating debate amongst our panelists this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the panelists.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the lovely introduction. My name is Craig Menzies. I'm a principal analyst with Forrester Research. And my area of expertise, what I research and write about, is customer experience. So NASCOM very nicely asked me to come today and moderate a panel. So I do have one bit of bad news, unfortunately. There will be no PowerPoint slides. So for those of you who were expecting PowerPoint slides, we've decided just to have a conversation. So I hope that works for you. So I guess you guys have been introduced. You don't need a second one. But that's what I... Excuse my very decorative laptop, but it is a tech conference, so I feel it's appropriate. What we wanted to do, really, the context of the discussion today is really what goes into creating an unparalleled customer experience. So one of the things that we struggle with a lot is to actually try to define what that means. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists, what is customer experience to you? How would you define it? What does it mean to your organization? And who wants to start? Arun, would you like to start?
Sure. This is a topic which is close to my heart. I think over the last 20 years in the IT industry, we are looking at it, how we build a technology which is customer-centric, as a customer-centered piece of it. So defining customer experience, so it's a complex thing because whenever you ask customer experience, it's a usability part which gets more visible to the people, which is the visible part of it. But defining customer experience, I look at three elements. One is called simplicity. Simplicity is not understanding what customer is asking for, but what he is not asking for. Understanding his emotional and rational together is what simplifies the customer experience. Second thing which I would say is, it's not about giving lot of functionality of a tagging mail to the customer, but what to be deleted is equally important point in the customer experience, that how you distill it, and that distilled piece is the customer experience part of it. And third is how you build from adoption of a particular solution, a particular technology, which drives the value for the customer, to addiction level, where he gets addicted to it. So that's how I define the customer experience in three ways: simplicity, delete, and make it adoption.
Okay, great. What do you think, Harry?
For us at Yahoo, we're in the internet business. And the way we think about customer experience is at every touch point, right, end user or advertiser or publisher, where customers have it value. So to add to Arun's point, I would like to add a fourth thing, which is serendipity. And what I mean by that is, at Yahoo we have defined this notion of daily digital habits. So typically today, most of us wake up in the morning, we reach for our mobile phone, we're checking email, we're checking the news, the scores from the game last night. Now those are all things that we're so used to doing offline, but we're transferring those habits slowly online and using digital devices to do that. But there is an element of serendipity, which is that if I'm able to actually understand the customer better and offer a level of personalization, so that when you're looking for your email or when you're looking at a news item, if I'm able to suggest to you something that's related that I think you as a customer will be interested you're likely to spend more time with, using our services and consuming our content. So that element of serendipity is particularly important and something that we're paying a lot of attention to. Another aspect that's very, very important, I think, is this whole notion of function over form. I mean, while obviously we want our software and our experiences to look drop-dead gorgeous and really have a fantastic user experience, it absolutely has to achieve the user's end goal. Right? I mean, if I'm looking for a particular thing, if I'm looking for a particular piece of software, or if I'm looking to buy a product, the sooner I can satisfy the intent for the customer, the happier he or she is going to be. And so that notion of really emphasizing the function of that piece of software or service, and not just the experience of it in terms of how beautiful it looks on screen and so on, is equally important.
Tuija?
Actually, a very different angle to customer experience, and that is an aspect of trust. Working in a bank, I think the customer experience starts from the trust. Imagine yourself, if you need to choose a bank where you put your money in, you need to be able to trust the bank. And that is much more than technology or any product or any service. And when you think of trust, trust is not only that, I trust them, something intangible. It is also very much activities, that when you have tough times, the bank that you really choose should be there to support you. So I see the customer experience from the perspective that it's not necessarily jingle bells and glory and nice gadgets or whatever, but it is something that you fundamentally can trust. And it also goes, of course, the other way, that also the bank needs to trust its customers, but definitely if I as a client choose a bank, I want to choose the one where I believe that my money is safe.
It seems like a pretty good way to choose a bank.
And a bit conventional thinking,
Yeah, exactly.
classic banker answer.
It's an interesting idea because we have here three very different industries represented. We have banking, we have I would just say media for Yahoo, yeah, pretty much, and then we have services providing, solutions providing. So, and yet there's actually a kind of consistent strain of how we all define customer experience. So I find that quite interesting. So while we're talking about defining things, how do you go about understanding who that customer is? And I think we're probably going to get three very different answers again. And instead of going left to right, I'm going to mix it up and start with Hari first.
Sure. For us, the key thing is who is our customer, right? So Yahoo being the business that it is in, we have three very different constituencies that we address. One is, of course, the end user, all of us using the software or the service, whether it's Mail or Yahoo News or Flickr. The second is the advertisers. They're trying to get in touch with their customers. They're trying to sell offers to them and products to them. And the better we get at being able to put in touch the right people with advertisers, it's extremely important. And that's essentially a function of understanding the behavior of our customers and what their needs are at that given point in time. So if I was in the business of, if I'm right now looking for an automobile, if I get a car ad when I go to Yahoo News, that doesn't seem intrusive to me. That's something that is I'm actually happy that Yahoo has recognized that need and is offering me something that's very relevant to me. So that whole notion of understanding the customer and being able to match the right kind of offer to the customer at that point in time is something that's very important, and that's huge value that we bring into our advertising partners. And then the third one is we're also a platform for people who want to publish content. So whether it's through our recent acquisition Tumblr or through other products that we offer, we allow people to be able to publish content at a very large scale and get in touch with their consumers. And each of these constituencies have different needs. Right? Like I said, for example, as an end user, what I care about is really, does it help me get my job done? Does it function in a way that's fast? To Tuija's point, I think trust and security and privacy is no longer just something that customers of bank care about. It's everybody uses the website. They're giving a lot of information to the website owners and publishers, and they want to make sure that that's being used responsibly, that the privacy is being protected and respected, that there's no leakage of information. So that becomes an equally important thing. From an advisor perspective, it's really about, are you as Yahoo allowing me to get in touch with my customers in the least intrusive way at a time when they have a need for my products? So these are some of the different aspects that come into play when we build a product.
Yeah, dive in.
Let me follow on that information aspect, because I think the banks have been in a lucky position over the past years, because we have regulators who expect and demand us to do all sort of know your customer type of procedures, and basically customers are very used to providing information to banks. So I think our challenge sometimes is that we have very much information of the customers, but how do we use that information? And now when all these new technologies, big data topics, types are emerging, I think the banks, actually sit a whole lot of information that we could use much more than we do nowadays. And I think also when you look backwards, how banks have used the information they have of their customers, most of the banks are quite advanced in utilizing also statistical ratings, scorecards, and have been quite early adopters in those areas. So we are lucky, we get the information, we have a lot of information, we've been using that information, but that is still quite a lot in the area of structured data. And I believe that there are vast opportunities also to combine that with more big data, but most of the banks, and I guess including also the bank that I represented, we are a little bit struggling to figure out how could we really use that in real use cases to get the business benefits out of it.
And Arun, one of the things that would be really interesting to hear about is the difference between your customer model, which of course is a B2B kind of arrangement, rather than the Nordea Bank or Yahoo, which is B2C typically.
Yeah, we see bank as a part of our, when we define the customer in our random teams, we discuss whether the bank is my customer or the solution which I'm designing for the end customer is my customer. If I'm designing experience, I'm designing the experience where bank is my partner, bank is my co-creation partner, where I co-create solution for the end customer. So at the end of the day, me and the bank or Tuija is on the same side of the table because we design a solution together, and I don't consider outsourcing as a method of lift and shift the cost arbitrage, but it's a method of enabling global people coming together and delivering the solution in a co-creation mode. So it's customer-wise, but if I have to influence the customer, I have to influence the segment in the bank, the business segment of the bank, the operation segment of the bank, and technology segment of the bank. So these three are the different territory on which I need to create my communication streams, that what communication should be there, product I'm building, which could be relevant for them. So that is one set of customers. Yeah. The second set of customer is that I need to have the framework in which I can understand what is the customer looking for. If I'm getting information from the customer, is about what is the information about usability, what is the information about operational part of it, which customer is looking for, what is the performance side of it, what is the analytics side of it, what is the risk of bank is perceiving, what is the integration side of it, and the security side of it. So there are several dimensions around which we need to pick up the information and take a framework of collecting the understanding of the customer around the framework. We call it in Polaris, COPARIS. So C stands for customer usability, O stands for operations, P for performance, A for analytics, R for risk, I for integration, S for security. So this acronym helps the people when they are meeting the customer that we are taking care of all the 7 areas which constitute a customer. And third piece is around what kind of products are relevant for the customer in various market segments, what innovations are happening on the banking products. So I need to build a table, periodic table kind of a table where I say there are 10 businesses bank runs for retail bank. There is a banking business, which is a core banking business, there is a credit card business, there is a lending business. There is a brokerage business, there is a wealth management business, there is a AMC business. There is a cash management business, there is a equity business, there is a trade business, there is a treasury business. So if there are 10 businesses are there, how do I pick up a best practices of Asia and apply them into a European context, and pick up a European context and apply them to American context? Being a global company and having an experience with that. So how do you package that information and plug into the right knowledge shelves? Right. Is the third framework which is required. So combination of these three, we are able to spot the much better ability of picking up the right understanding of the customer and applying the context and connecting to the customer in their environment.
Yeah, great point. Now, I saw a lot of you nodding along with Arun. So how many people in the audience, just a show of hands, feel that theirs is a more B2B kind of customer engagement model? One or two? A few? Yeah. So it's a much more complex model, and as we struggle to sort of define who our customers are, okay, let's say that we've won that struggle.
Challenge.
Go ahead.
When you say that it's much more complex, I would actually say the opposite. I mean, B2B models are much more simple than towards the household customers in the banking. B2B, you know, you can relate to their companies. The companies have pretty much the same needs, at least particularly when you relate to banking. You need cash management, you need corporate loans, and what have you. When you start looking at the household segment, we used to probably classify them based on or segment them into the segments depending on how much they use different banking products. But nowadays, I mean, the segments get much more fragmented. And you might even in the same segment, I take an example in private banking, you have high net worth customers, but some of them, they want to have very specialized service where you are servicing them. The other end, exactly as net worthy, they might want to do everything through e-service because they want to do the trading themselves, or they want to feel where their money is placed. And therefore, I think the household segment or the private consumer segment is getting so fragmented that to really understand and capture what is it that this customer perceives as a great customer experience, I think, that's my view, it's much more complex than B2B business.
Yeah.
I agree. You know, if you look at whether it's retail banking or consumer internet scale, the scale when you're dealing with end customers directly is something that becomes a huge challenge, right? So how do you deal with shifting consumer needs? And that shift not only in time, but shift on multiplicity of dimensions. And how do you actually, so when you're building software or a service that you're building at, let's say, internet scale, you're addressing over 1 billion users on a monthly basis, but every time you log in, you feel that we understand exactly what you guys are looking for, and we're giving you things that are extremely customized to you. Right? And that goes back to exactly what you were saying, retail banking, I would equate it to, how do I know that you're a high net worth individual who may have slightly different needs than someone else? And I think the challenge that we have in the consumer internet space is that those interactions that we have with our customers typically tend to be fairly short, in the sense that, I don't grow up, I start banking, let's say, when I get my first job or when I'm going to college as a student, and I generally tend to be in the bank for a large period of time. And typically what ends up happening is, over time the bank gets a lot of data about me. They're essentially following me through my life stages, and they know exactly what certain changes are happening. But that's not the kind of relationship I have with the consumer internet company. So that information we have to implicitly learn. So we have to look at your usage patterns, and we have to say, okay, now you're going through a life stage where you're looking to buy a house or a car. And how do we learn that implicitly without it becoming creepy to the point where people are saying, oh, how did Yahoo find out that I'm in the market for a house or a car right now? And to be able to do that in a way that comes across as being adding a lot of value, but not seen as being intrusive to your privacy is a huge challenge. I think that's there when you're dealing with end consumers as opposed to B2B settings.
Point over here is as a B2B, you need to spot what you are saying. So if for retail bank or a wealth management customer, I need to spot the same pattern. But I have an intermediate there to whom first I have to influence him to take it to the market. I cannot sense that product directly into the market and sense it out. So you have availability that you can, if you are doing innovation, you can test out the market whether it's working or not and pull back or showing it. For me, I have to go on somebody else's shoulder to test out my hypothesis.
That's it. Your notion, it's much more networking and getting connected and working together as one team. But I would actually claim that that's the way how B2B business has worked over the several decades. And if I look at the pattern, how you need to improve the customer interaction, you know what you need to do in that segment. But looking at now the sort of private consumers, I think you see much bigger transformation, much bigger paradigm shift. With the technology, with the new generations that do not have probably the same affiliation to their banks or any of their service providers, that when I started banking with one, I stay until I die. I think it's totally a different angle, and also I think looking at my own teenagers at home, it is much more, selfish is probably too strong a statement, but much more sort of customized service they expect from any service provider, not only from the banks, but any industry. And that puts a whole lot of pressure for at least the banking industry where the consumer business has been, or private household customers have been seen much more in bigger bulks. And you believe that one size or a few sizes fits all. And now all of a sudden you need to face a lot of personalized needs, and that puts the pressure, as Arun said, to the whole banking model, the whole operating model. Because when you look at how banks have been starting to use and adopt IT, that was already like 1970s, 1960s. And some of the systems that we're still maintaining might come from that era. And trying to put all those systems together to create online services, mobile services, 24/7 availability, it is a big transformation. So I still kind of feel that we see much bigger transformation and paradigm shift towards their individual or private consumers, customers than we see in their business to business.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really interesting view. And one of the things as we were talking, I was musing is that as we're working through this challenge of defining who this new customer, this new kind of customer is, it occurs to me that all three of you guys on the panel all work within the technology area of the company, right? I think one of the things that probably the audience would be really interested to know is there a different perspective on defining the customer and understanding the customer from a technology perspective, from a technical field?
Just repeat the question again.
Sorry?
Just repeat the question again.
Sorry, I can't hear you about down here.
And repeat the question again.
Oh, okay, sorry, I can do that. So when we talk about customer understanding and trying to figure out who these customers are, do we have a different perspective on it as technology people? Do we have a different way of defining it than the more marketing side of the businesses might define it?
I think if I'm keeping a customer in the center and then defining what his needs are, technology is just an enabler for fulfilling that need. So technology is by itself is not defining the customer need. So you keep a customer in the center and then say, like we have designed a customer experience for our internal Facebook. So Polaris corporate Facebook, which is there, we have kept employee in the center. And we say he needs social networking within the organization, whether it's about music, about sports, about movies. And he needs a knowledge networking and he needs a project networking. If team networking has to be done, then I need one Facebook which can enable it in a secure environment. Some environment are open environment which are circles and some environment are closed environment which is the rooms. So now, if I do that way, then technology is only enabler. I can use live connection, I can use SharePoint, I can use my own technology. So technology doesn't have a view. Technology is a view only from an application perspective, in what context I am using and what kind of connect I am doing on it.
I think I have a slightly different view. I think technology can definitely be used as an accelerator. And what I mean by that, I'll give you a very concrete example from Yahoo. So I do work very closely with the customer care and the voice of customer. And typically, like most web services, if you use Yahoo today, what you'll find is that when you register online to become a Yahoo user, we ask you a challenge phrase, which is in case you forget your password, we can ask you the challenge phrase and you can type in the answer for that. Now it turns out that when most people sign up for an online service, they don't view it as necessarily at the same level as opening a bank account, for example. Right? So the kind of question that they will pick for a challenge phrase or the kind of answer is not something that they necessarily will remember over time. And what ends up happening is over the course of, let's say, 5-10 years, they're increasingly becoming more and more dependent on Yahoo because the bank statements are not showing up at Yahoo. The kids' homework and other engagements are starting to show up on the Yahoo mail account. And suddenly one fine day, for whatever reason, they forget the password. And then they call customer care and say, I need access. And we say, well, here's a challenge question. And it will be something like, what's your favorite book? And of course, the favorite book has changed during the course of 10 years. Right? It's not what I typed 10 years ago. And so that's a perfect example of how technology can be used as an accelerator. And what I mean by that is that as your level of interaction with Yahoo starts increasing, so let's say that, we determine that you're spending on average X number of hours a week, we can prompt you without waiting for 10 years to say, look, we've seen that your usage of Yahoo services has gone up. Here's a challenge phrase. You may want to think about changing it now in case it's not relevant to you. Do you want to pick something that's more meaningful, that you're more likely to remember because you're seeing that it's becoming more friend? So that's just one example of how technology can be used very effectively, not just to guarantee a really good customer experience over the course of a long period of time. Because if 10 years later I've forgotten the challenge phrase and I'm calling you and you cannot help me at the other end of the line, I'm terribly disappointed because at this point in time I have so much information at Yahoo. It's become so critical to sort of my life activities. The fact that you will not be able to give me access to my account because I can't remember something as simple as what my favorite book was 10 years ago when I first signed up is a huge problem for me.
What was your favorite book 10 years ago? Tuija?
Your question from slightly different angle again. I seem to always pick a different angle compared to my dear co-panelists here, but I look at more from that if I work in a technology side of the company, how do I perceive the customer? And in our company, we made actually a rather big, I would say a fundamental change that we did not talk about internal partners or internal colleagues as clients, which used to be the case. IT was perceiving their business partners as their customers. But we decided that this company only has one customer, and that is our customer that we deliver services to. And when doing that change, it actually started to change also the mindset in the sort of back office functions, because everyone needed to understand what is your contribution to the customer experience. Creating great customer experiences is one of the three values of Nordea Bank. And every single employee in the bank needs to know what is their contribution to creating great customer experiences. And I think that was a big change in the back office functions because, all of a sudden they were not only doing IT, they were providing a great important contribution to the customer success. And actually, I believe on the other angle of this, more moving into this operating model aspect, now when we look at how integrated the whole delivery to the customer is, I think it has become easier and easier to relate to the customer experience when you work in IT. Imagine e-banking service, it's down. Your work that you are supporting, maintaining those solutions, it's obviously and directly visible as an end-user experience. And I think that's a big change.
I understand, and I think, let me just add to what you're saying. I think technology, what we are doing as a technology vendor to the bank like yours, is that we are spotting the patterns on a customer experience pattern on the front-end technology. So we identified 18 patterns on the customer experiences, which are the best practices is there. We package them into a technology so that when next time application is delivered to the customer, they have a repeatability and institutionalization of the experience, so that rather than various technology teams delivering differently. That is definitely a connect point. We call this as a canvas technology. We understand that customer can be anywhere, any device. If he is using it, then you need to have the same technology instead of working on desktop differently, tablet differently, mobile differently. It should coexist with the 1960, 1970 application. So we spotted all those pains of the customer and built into the technology we call canvas. We built it, some 33 patterns we identified in back-end technology. How the operations work in the bank, how the exceptions happen, how the check bouncing happens, how the circulation happens. We identified 23 such patterns. We connected them into one common technology called hub technology that you bring everything in the hub and then all the processes can come to the hub, all the workflow come to the hub, all the business So that's what I can say technology is enabler. So this hub technology and canvas technology are both enabler to understanding market patterns and then tracking them and accelerating the change in the bank. So what you are expecting from technology provider on the same table, I think we are investing in that kind of area so that your experience can be more robust and more consistent.
Interesting. I think that's a great point, Arun, and actually a nice segue into the next topic I want to bring up for us. Probably have about 5 more minutes to talk through this one. As predicted, we didn't get past the first question, so there you go. Anyway, so in the last 5 to 10 minutes that we have, and we're going to take some questions from the audience. What's important in designing and delivering customer experience from your perspective? So let's start with you, Tuija.
When being in banking, when we compare who has the nicest apps, okay, that's only the tip of the iceberg. I think when starting to design the customer experiences, you don't get very far by creating apps or creating the creaming of the cake. You need to ensure that you have the entire operating model transformed to support these digital processes. Yes, digital banking, it's a hype, but I fundamentally believe that that's what you need to challenge yourself with, because these old technologies that we have implemented through the decades, I mean, we can never be agile enough to respond to the needs. And if you think of complex processes, you cannot really create customized customer experiences, and that is a paradigm shift that most of the major banks are going through in the organizations or in the world right now. And one of the things that we need to do, we need to simplify, we need to create simplicity in our processes, and that allows us then to expand and create customized services.
Great simplicity. Arun?
So I think for us it's always been about putting yourself in the customer's shoes and walking a mile in them. And what I mean by that is we are lucky at Yahoo to actually be using every piece of software that we build. So all of our employees use Yahoo Mail, they use Yahoo News, Yahoo Finance, Flickr, and so on. So what we've done over time is built a culture that allows employees, we have an internal program called dogfooding, so almost every piece of service or software that we release externally, we make sure that it's actually used by our employees internally, and they get to experience all of the kinks in the software and address all of the issues. So by doing that, what ends up happening is they know exactly what the pain is that the customer eventually will go through, and so they pay particular attention to address those issues up front. And that also creates a very different mindset. So we have a program where we actively encourage our employees to spend at least a couple of hours every quarter with the real customers. So we pair them up with individual single customers, and they just watch how the customers use the software. And often that gives them insights, because the things that, as a software developer or as a product manager, the things that I think are extremely important and I pay a lot of attention to, maybe things that the customer doesn't really care about, but things that I'm fairly dismissive about, a customer will care a lot about. And for example, a simple thing is performance, right? So we always pay a lot of attention to building a lot of features into our software and to make sure that it looks pretty, but we don't necessarily pay as much attention to the performance. And if I can just make everything that much faster, 50% faster, that means what's going to happen is customers who come to our sites are going to spend more time with our sites. They're going to get more done in the time that they spend. But what we've seen in a lot of studies is that customers often reward companies that allow them to do things faster. It applies equally in banking. If I'm, let's say, doing retail banking with a particular bank, and they have lots of branches near where I live, and I know that if I go to a branch, there's always going to be, the queue is only going to be 3 people long, and I can be in and out in 10 minutes. I'm going to frequent that bank that much more often, right? So this parallels between offline and online really do apply, whether it's trust or safety or security or performance. It's just that they may take different forms, but the same mechanisms and the same things are always important. And you really don't know what's important unless you put yourself in the customer's shoes, or you're actively watching and interacting with customers to understand what's important to them, and then build services that really highlight those things and solve those problems.
Arun?
I think design and delivering the customer experience is about consistency and robustness and scalability. When you do it, it's easier said than done. There are some heroic effort in many organizations. There are few designers, few customer experience experts. But if you roll out large scale, like Yahoo does or Google does, or a large bank has done across million customers, or a software company like we have 10,000 people, so how to have that mindset? I think we look at it that how can we consistently deliver. The four things which is important. One is research, investment in research in all the 7 dimensions we talked about it around Polaris. So there has to be researchers who can understand what is coming up in the marketplace, whether it's a usability part of it, operation part of it, performance part of it, analytics part of it, all the 7 dimensions. Second thing is around the physical space, the physical design of the space, the way work environment is there, the way workplace is organized. So we created a design center in which customer, what Hari is saying, I have to feel it, I have to feel the experience. So a design center has to be a role modeling behavior where we are looking at experience center, which could be customer experience center. So we invested something like 10,000 square feet in creating a design center. Then we created a technology enablement tool so that person doesn't go to the same defects or the same. So the technology like Canvas technology, how technology enables some people to write a product or services around it. And finally, it's about inoculation of that customer experience thinking process at an institutional level. So it has to be like we call it education, somebody says training, I would say inoculation. We have to inoculate the entire organization around the customer experience where everybody, and it has to be every time, like a polio inoculation, you have to do every year, you have to keep on doing it to ensure that everybody has customer in the center, not in the only vocabulary as a customer experience.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Now, so 3 very different perspectives, I think, kind of overlapping a little bit there, but 3 very different perspectives that you can take as advice in how to at least get started thinking about delivering a great customer experience. Now we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left. We'd love to have some questions for the panel members. Anybody got a question?
Hi, Harry. Slightly sensitive question, so if it gets tough, just nod your head and I'll walk out. Okay. So, 2 things. One is lately, when we talk about innovation, I'm putting my question around customer service. Talk about innovation, we don't hear much lately about Yahoo. My years resonate around Google. So, what is Yahoo doing in terms of innovation for the customer? Number 1. Number 2 is, I've been a big fan of Yahoo about 10 years back. I bought a lot of stocks, sold a lot of stocks for Yahoo during the .com. I'm very happy. After that, I drifted towards Google completely. Now what I do, and I'm being honest to you, is if I have to submit my email address to something critical, I use Google, and something that is spam, I use Yahoo. So my question is, why do you think that trend has happened as a customer, not just me? And what is Yahoo going to do to reverse that trend?
So I think, if you look at it, first of all, Yahoo is still the category leader in many categories like news, finance, sports. We're one of the largest photo sharing services. If you look at what has happened in the last year and a half, what you've seen is an acceleration at the pace at which we launch products. We are going mobile first. For example, you may or may not know this, but weather, which is one of the most popular applications on the iPhone today, Yahoo Weather actually won an Apple Design Award. We've combined sort of the simplicity of weather with a very, very enriched experience. Another example is with Flickr, our photo sharing service, where we recently launched a terabyte free storage. Yet another example is we recently partnered with Dropbox on Yahoo Mail. And Yahoo Mail still continues to be one of the most popular mail services worldwide. So there is definitely an acceleration in the pace with which we are delivering the product. We are definitely focused very much on mobile. We are also going after a much younger demographic as a recent acquisition of Download. So these are just proof points, right? And I think if you look at it, the reason to believe, to answer your question, is if you look at what we've been doing over the last year and a half, ever since Meyer has come on board as the CEO, is really we are starting to reinforce this virtuous cycle of, as we call it. It's a build great product. It starts really with empowering your employee base and creating a culture internally, like some of the things that I talked about of really focusing on the customer, making sure that our employees are spending time with customer. So that then translates to building great product experiences for our customers, which then leads to increased traffic. For example, for the last 3 or 4 months in a row, Yahoo has been number 1 in Comscore reported traffic in the US, right, ahead of even Facebook and Google. That means then advertisers will come in and that will get increased revenues flowing into the organization, which then can be reinvested back into creating these unparalleled customer experiences. So obviously we realize it's a journey, right? It's definitely, it's a marathon. But we're also organizing that marathon as a series of sprints, which means that the pace at which we are launching these products and these experiences, whether it's on mobile devices, on smartphones, on tablets, you will see that pace accelerating. That's already accelerated and you will see that continuously happening. So I think if we have the same conversation a year from now, it will be a very different one. I'm confident of that.
Good question and really good answer. But yeah, these are the kinds of issues that come up in CX, right? You know, and related very much to our discussion around trust as well, I think. Any other questions? We have time for probably just one more.
A question for you, Tuija. There are these alternate currencies that yesterday in one of the sessions we talked about, bitcoins and things like that. Now, as a bank, what's your reaction to those kind of trends, and what's the response to that? Because you see, that's also something that's going to be revolutionizing the industry.
That I didn't quite hear. Can you say again the question?
Now, I was saying that trends like bitcoins, alternate currencies, etc., which are gaining popularity, still early days. So, as a bank, what is the response to those kind of trends? Are you looking at it as a topic worth considering? What's the response?
Did you ask about Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Okay. Of course, I mean, being a banker, I need to say that Bitcoin is not official money. None of the authorities consider it as being official money. So if you want to go for Bitcoin, of course you take a particular risk. But of course we see and we follow these trends, but we do not, I mean, you need to separate, I mean, this is back to this trust as well. I mean, it is not recognized as an official means for payment. And being a conventional industry, I mean, you need to, of course, follow, we recognize, we see what's happening, but it is totally unregulated. There are no sort of rules, so if you put your money in that, you take your odds. But that's where we are, and we know also that things are happening, but we are observing, and officially we are not affiliated with that.
Question. Okay. We have 2 minutes remaining, so one quick question. Anybody have a quick one? Yes, sir?
When we talk about consumer experience, customer experience and using the IT, one is a casual customer who just comes and browses, let's say, a news site or something like that. And another one, you start getting into serious business. Let's say I want to pay money or withdraw money or transfer money or something like that. So when it comes to the casual experience, whatever you do, you look for the animation, you look for the colors, you look for the layout, so on and so forth. And when it comes to serious, again, the things start ticking in that security is important, more information is required, and so on and so forth. Then we say this is all not so good. So how do you, compromise between the two? One is the casual, and the one is the serious part of it.
To answer this question, I think that when you watch the TV channels itself, I was watching sometimes even the election results. How do you put what information, what content in what pattern, which is likeable to the human emotion as well as the complete data. So 2 minds were simultaneously you are going to a website, and Amazon is there. It's not about the order placement. When order is executed is that is the experience. The experience is when you just go to the website and then complete the complete transaction and then you experience the whole thing. Then only next time you will go to Amazon. You will not go to Amazon if that experience was a bad experience. So if you go to bank site and you find that it's a speed which matters, it's a complete operation which matters, and the way it's layout, the way you go to any hotel, the way the hotel is organized themselves, how does it look like, so all the 3 things are equally important to give the full experience. And that's why it becomes addictive in nature.
Great way to finish that off. Unless you want to give 3 seconds.
So I was just going to say that for me it's less about casual or serious, and it's more about what is the need. So at any given point, if I'm browsing a news site, my need is to consume information. If I can offer a personalized service to you that allows you to optimize your time and consume that information quickly, that's as important as making sure that you can complete a banking transaction in the shortest time possible. So it's really about understanding the need and tailoring your services to match that need at that point in time.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I think a round of applause for the panelists. Thank you. Very, very interesting discussion. And thank you also for myself for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Menzies. I think we are customer to this panel, and our experience was fabulous. So there is another round of applause, please. And may I request our chairperson to please offer a token of appreciation to our panel.